He made the world laugh with nervous stammers and wild eyes. But behind the curtain, Don Knotts was fighting battles that almost destroyed him. And when his daughter finally revealed the truth, fans couldn't believe what he had been hiding all along. This is the story of how one of TV's funniest men carried some of the heaviest secrets in Hollywood. The name Don Knotts brings back memories of nervous stammers, bug-eyed glances, and a laugh that seemed to echo through generations. To millions of fans, he was Barney Fife, the bumbling deputy of the Andy Griffith Show, whose clumsy charm made him one of television's most beloved figures. With 5 Emmy Awards and a career that stretched across decades, Don Knotts carved himself into American culture as the man who could make anyone laugh just by walking into a room. But behind the laughter was a man carrying secrets that few ever knew. For all the joy he brought the world, Don lived much of his life in the grip of fear, illness, and loneliness. His daughter, Karen Knotts, has finally opened the door to that hidden truth. Not to diminish her father's legacy, but to complete it. She wanted the world to see the man behind the mask, the fragile soul who fought battles long before stepping onto the soundstage in Mayberry. This is the untold story of Don Knotts, a story of shadows and stage lights, of triumph and tragedy, of one man's lifelong struggle to turn private pain into public laughter. A childhood of shadows. Don Knotts was born Jesse Donald Knotts on July 21, 1924, in Morgantown, West Virginia. He was the youngest of 4 brothers, born into a household that was already stretched thin. His mother, Elsie, gave birth to him at the age of 40, and his father, William Jesse, was a man deeply troubled by personal demons. The home environment was unstable, filled with tension and unpredictability. For young Don, security was never guaranteed. Unlike many children, he didn't grow up surrounded by siblings close to his age. His brothers were much older, living in worlds far removed from his own. Don often felt alone, even within his own family. The one brother he admired most, Sid, had a sparkling sense of humor that could brighten even the darkest day. But tragedy struck when Sid died suddenly from an asthma attack. Don was still a boy, and the loss hit him like a tidal wave. For the first time, he came face to face with grief, and the shadow of that heartbreak would never fully fade. In the chaos of his childhood, Don discovered an unlikely refuge, his imagination. He crafted a ventriloquist dummy named Danny and poured his energy into creating routines and characters. Danny wasn't just a toy, he was a friend, a confidant, and an early partner in comedy. With Danny by his side, Don could escape the tension of home life and create moments of laughter in a world that often felt suffocating. At school, Don's wit began to peek through. Classmates elected him class president, and he was known for lightening the mood with a quick joke or funny face. Yet, even as others saw a confident boy, Don felt like an outsider. Inside, he battled nervousness and a deep sense of insecurity. Years later, his daughter Karen would explain that the anxious, high-strung characters he played on screen weren't just performances. They were rooted in the real fear and nervous energy he carried throughout his life. Comedy, for Don, was never just entertainment. It was survival. From stage fright to soldier's stage. In the early 1940s, Don dreamed of breaking into show business. He tried his luck in New York, but the city's casting directors were harsh. Too awkward, too jittery, they said. Defeated, Don returned home to West Virginia. The rejection could have ended his ambitions, but history had other plans. The world was at war, and in 1943, Don enlisted in the U.S. Army. His assignment wasn't on the battlefield, but on the stage. He became part of the 6117th Special Services Battalion, a unit designed to entertain soldiers stationed far from home. With the touring variety show Stars and Gripes, Don crisscrossed the Pacific, performing sketches and routines for men who desperately needed relief from the fear and monotony of war. The soldiers adored him. They saw in Don not a polished entertainer, but someone who mirrored their own anxieties and vulnerabilities. His nervous energy became his superpower, a way to turn shared fear into laughter. By the time he left the army in 1946, Don carried with him not only medals, the World War II Victory Medal, the Philippine Liberation Medal, and 4 Bronze Service Stars, but also a sharpened stage presence and a renewed sense of purpose. The boy who once cowered in his father's shadow had discovered that his nerves could command a stage. Struggling actor in New York. When the war ended, Don returned to West Virginia University. He pursued a degree in education with a minor in speech, graduating in 1948. Along the way, he performed often, sometimes with Danny the Dummy, sometimes just with his quick wit. The applause he earned convinced him that New York was calling once again. In 1949, Don married Catherine Metz, a minister's daughter who would become his first wife. Together, they scraped together what little they had and returned to New York City. This time, Don had more than a dream. He had experience, resilience, and a determination forged in the crucible of war. The road was anything but easy. Don picked up radio gigs, appearing on programs like Bobby Benson and the B-Bar-B Riders. He landed minor television roles, including a spot on the soap opera Search for Tomorrow. Slowly, his awkward, jittery style, once dismissed, began to carve out its own space in the industry. He wasn't a leading man. He wasn't conventionally handsome or suave, but he was different, and different was exactly what television was starting to crave. Breakthrough with Andy Griffith. The true turning point came in 1956 when Don landed on The Steve Allen Show. In sketches, he played nervous interview subjects and twitchy oddballs. Audiences roared with laughter. At last, Don's nervousness wasn't a liability. It was his calling card. That same year, he reconnected with Andy Griffith in the Broadway play No Time for Sergeants. Don played a bumbling corporal opposite Griffith's country boy charm, and the chemistry was undeniable. The two men struck up a friendship that would change both of their lives. When Griffith launched the Andy Griffith Show in 1960, Don half-jokingly suggested he should play the deputy. The idea stuck, and Barney Fife was born. Week after week, Don transformed twitchy expressions, stammering delivery, and frantic energy into pure comedy gold. America fell in love with Barney, and Don's performance earned him 5 Emmy Awards in just 5 years. What made Barney so magnetic wasn't just his nervous fumbling, but his heart. Barney was loyal, sincere, and desperate to prove himself, even when he had no clue what he was doing. In many ways, he was Don himself, vulnerable, insecure, but deeply human. Audiences didn't just laugh at Barney, they loved him. And Don, for the first time, felt the power of being universally adored. But fame came at a price. Don's long hours on set, combined with his relentless anxiety, strained his marriage to Catherine. She struggled to fit into the Hollywood social circle, and the cracks in their relationship widened. After 13 years and 2 children, the marriage ended in divorce. Behind the laughter of Mayberry, Don was quietly unraveling. Leaving Mayberry, the big gamble. By 1965, Don faced a career-defining decision. Believing that the Andy Griffith Show would soon end, he declined to renew his contract and instead signed a movie deal with Universal Pictures. He dreamed of escaping Barney Fife's shadow, of becoming a leading man in Hollywood. For a brief moment, it looked promising. Films like The Incredible Mr. Limpet and The Reluctant Astronaut gave him starring roles, and audiences showed up. But the magic of Mayberry was hard to replicate. Audiences loved Don, but only as the jittery sidekick. In 1969, he pushed further with The Love God, a risque comedy about a man accidentally turned into a Playboy-style publisher. The film flopped. Audiences weren't ready to accept Don Knotts as a romantic lead, and critics panned it. His Hollywood dreams dimmed, and with them, his confidence. Middle years of fame and pain. Through the 1970s, Don tried to reinvent himself. He launched The Don Knotts Show, a variety series designed to showcase his talents, but it couldn't compete with powerhouse programs of the time and was canceled after 1 season. Still, Don remained a fixture in Hollywood. He appeared in Disney comedies like The Apple Dumpling Gang and found a steady paycheck with guest appearances. In the late 70s, he joined the cast of Three's Company, playing the eccentric landlord Ralph Furley. Once again, Don's nervous charm brought laughs, but he was no longer the Emmy-winning star he once was. Behind the scenes, Three's Company cast members recalled Don as a consummate professional who hid his struggles well. John Ritter once described him as a quiet storm, shy, reserved, but always ready to explode with brilliance the moment the cameras rolled. To audiences, he was still gold. To his daughter, however, he was often absent, worn out, or distant. His second marriage to Laura Lee Solankiewicz ended in 1983 after nearly a decade of tension. Karen Knotts would later admit that life at home was often turbulent. Her father's constant anxiety, dependence on medication, and exhaustion from performing created distance that was hard to bridge. America adored Barney Fife, but Don Knotts, the man, was harder to love. Declining health and private battles. By the 1980s, Don was a television legend, but his personal struggles only deepened. A diagnosis of macular degeneration threatened to take away his eyesight. For a performer whose career relied on timing and expressions, the thought of blindness was devastating. Though surgery saved much of his vision, the scare shook him to his core. Years of smoking caught up to him in the 1990s, when doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. Though he had quit smoking years earlier, the disease had left its mark. Don kept the illness quiet, unwilling to let fans see him as weak or fading. Even as the disease progressed, he insisted he was fine, always quick with a joke to deflect questions. Despite his struggles, Don continued to work. He lent his voice to animated films, appeared in guest roles on TV shows, and even made cameos in films like Pleasantville. Hollywood respected him as a survivor, a man who never stopped finding ways to make people laugh. Final love and last laugh. In 1987, while working on the sitcom What a Country, Don met actress Frances Yarborough. She was much younger and worked behind the scenes, helping him with lines. At first, few imagined their connection would last, but over time, their bond deepened. In 2002, the two married, giving Don the stability he had long craved but rarely found. When his health worsened, Frances stood by his side. By 2006, as cancer consumed his body, Don faced his final days at UCLA Medical Center surrounded by family and close friends. Andy Griffith, his old friend and partner in comedy, was there. In an emotional moment, Griffith whispered to Don, calling him Jess, a name known only to the closest of friends, and begged him to keep breathing. Don couldn't speak, but he moved his shoulder, a final acknowledgement of their unbreakable bond. His daughter Karen recalled that even in those final moments, her father's instinct for comedy never left him. As he struggled to breathe, he said or did something so funny that Karen and Frances burst into laughter. Karen ran from the room, ashamed to laugh as her father lay dying. Later, she realized it was exactly what he would have wanted. Laughter was his gift, and he gave it until the very end. On February 24, 2006, Don Knotts passed away at the age of 81. Karen Knotts reveals the truth. Years later, Karen Knotts published her memoir, Tied Up in Knots, revealing the private battles her father carried. A painful childhood, crippling anxiety, failed marriages, and a fight against illness that never truly ended. She did not share these details to tarnish his legacy, but to honor it, to show that behind Barney Fife's nervous antics was a man of extraordinary courage. She revealed how often Don would come home from filming too exhausted to speak, how anxiety left him bedridden before performances, and how he used comedy as a shield. She also revealed his softer side, a man who adored his children, who longed for connection, and who fought every day to give joy to others despite his own demons. Don Knotts lived a life of contradictions. To the world, he was the bumbling deputy who made us laugh until our sides hurt. To his family, he was a man who often came home drained, distant, and consumed by anxiety. His laughter was real, but so were his struggles. In the end, perhaps that is his greatest gift, that even as he fought battles we could never see, he still found a way to give us joy. He never stopped making people laugh, even in his final hours. And that may be the truest measure of his legacy. So, what about you? Do you remember laughing at Barney Fife's nervous antics on the Andy Griffith Show? Share your memories of Don Knotts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew.